Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Welcome everyone. I'm really happy to have you all for the second lecture of our Pāli course. I'm one of the co-teachers of this course. My name is Venerable Sumedha Loka, and you can call me Bhante Sumedha Loka. So I'm really happy to be here today and to give you an introduction to verbs in Pāli language. We have a lot to talk about today, and we have lots of topics to cover, but don't worry, these things will be addressed again and again throughout our discourse, throughout our lectures. So I want to begin with a motivational story. This motivational story originally comes from Myanmar. This motivational story is about a monk, very old monk. He was in his 60s when this was happened. So this monk was living in a rural area in Myanmar, and as the story goes, he was not a diligent practitioner. He used to brush his teeth using a wooden stick. Normally, after brushing his teeth, he would throw this away to a same place every day. And one day, he found out that a huge pile of these wooden brushes. And it occurred to him that if I were to memorize one word day by day, I would have learned this much of words in a language. He originally wanted to learn Pāli grammar, Pāli language, but he didn't do. He was not diligent in his practice, but one day this thought occurred to him. Having motivated by this thought, he wanted to learn Pāli language. So there weren't many books at that time, so he had to approach the king asking for books to learn Pāli language. He went to the palace asking for books. As the story goes, the king seemed not a wise person. When he inquired the king about books, he told the monk that a person like you, a very old person, how could you learn Pāli language? Pāli language is said to be really difficult. How could you learn this kind of language? If you were to study Pāli language, even a pestle, i.e. meaning a pestle, wooden pestle that you use to crush substances, a wooden pestle would sprout with leaves. This was he joked at him and he laughed at him. He made this kind of joke, telling that he would not be able to succeed in his journey of learning Pāli language. But the monk took this in a really positive way. And he somehow offered the books, and he went to his monastery. And day by day, he studied Pāli language. And his reputation went all over the Myanmar. He got the real fluency in that language. And after some time, he went to meet the king, having taken a pestle, attached leaves on it to show that he got the fluency in that language. It is said that his skill of Pāli language was tested in a special way. He was a very special person, and his skill was tested in a very special way. So how the monks or the elders tested him, he had to submerge into a pool, and whenever he emerged from the pool, he had to give answers to the question thrown at him. So one day, he was in this pool, and monks were preparing to ask questions from him. And they were clearing the throat in this way, ahang, or something like that. Ahang is a Pāli word, a personal pronoun to denote I. So while he was emerging from the water, he heard this sound, ahang. He thought the question is all about ahang, and he gave the morphology of the word personal pronoun ahang. And all the word formation and all the grammatical aspects related to the word ahang. To the amaze of everyone, He was credited with his skills. And this place is even today is worshipped by many Burmese and people from all over the world. So the main takeaway, what is the main takeaway from this story? Anyone can learn Pāli. What you have to do is you have to change the attitude. Pāli is a difficult language because it's not a spoken language. But if you have the right attitude, right motivation, you can master this language. So in the beginning of our story, the lecture, I would like to tell all of you that if you change your mind, you can do anything. You can learn Pāli, you can master Pāli, you can read lots of things. So by learning Pāli, you have the access to enormous body of literature, and you can know about the Buddha, and also you can know the meditation techniques that will surely help you. So in today's lecture, we are going to talk about these topics. As you can see here on the board, we'll be talking about verb and its definition, and then some various aspects related with verbs such as person, number, tense, mood, and voice. And then we are going to talk about the basic principal parts of a verb. And also we are going to talk about the conjugation, the concept called conjugation, and also something called verbal base and all. Let me tell you one thing. Don't worry if you don't understand these concepts. Let me tell you this as well. Which comes first? Does the grammar come first or the language comes first? Language came first and the grammar came second. So this is what you have to understand. So these are fictions or concepts of grammarians, but we have to understand these grammatical principles in order to master a language. So in today's lecture, we are going to proceed to the heart of the Pāli language, that is to say, learn about verbs. Let me ask a question from you. How do you understand a verb? What is called verb? And what are the grammatical aspects related to verb? Well, you may simply answer the question, verbs express an action. Verb is a grammatical term which expresses an action. But we can understand a verb in a more precise way than this. There are certain grammatical aspects to a verb. Try to think about a verb in your language. What are the aspects related to verb? Try to think about a verb. So, by analyzing a Pāli verb, we can understand verb is a combination of grammatical parts. We can break a verb into its root and also a conjugational sign and verbal termination. We call a verb root plus conjugational sign, a verbal termination becomes a verb. So we have to understand this right from the get-go. And again, there are certain characteristics concerning verb. There are 5 main characteristics that define a verb in Pāli language. Let's analyze these one by one. First is person. This is grammatical person. What do you understand by grammatical person? Well, person is someone who performs the action. In Pāli language, we have 3 persons, like in English. First person, second person, and third person. Who is first person? In English, we say speaker is called the first person. I is the first person singular, and we is the first person plural. And second person, what is second person? Second person is someone spoken to, someone in front of you. You are in front of me. So we use you as second person singular and you all as a second person plural. And who is the third person? Third person is the person spoken about. Someone who is not me, not you, all the other personal pronouns fall into this category. So the third person singular is he, she, or it, and third person plural is they. So by analyzing a verb, we can get to know about the person who is performing the action, who did perform the action, who is performing the action, also who will perform the action. By analyzing a verb, we can get to know about person. And also, verbs exhibit numbers. How does a verb exhibit number? Well, verbs may be either singular or plural. Let's take an example in English language. He cooks. When we analyze the word cooks, we understand that cooks a singular verb. It talks about a singular subject. The person who is performing the action of cooking is a singular person, a one person. And in English, the plural form for cooks is cook. So by analyzing the word cook, we understand that cook is a plural verb. So again, the second aspect to a verb is the number. Verbs denote numbers. In other words, verbs say about who is performing the action. And the third aspect to a verb is its tense. We call a tense verb's relation to its time, we call a tense. So by analyzing a verb, we can get to know about its time. Let's say I cooked. When I heard this one, I get the notion that the action of cooking has been performed in the past, not the present time. If I say I cook, I understand action of cooking happening right now. And if I were to say I will cook, you understand that action of cooking will happen tomorrow. So verbs tell the time also. We understood that verbs tell about a person, verbs tell about number, and verbs tell about tense. And also there's another aspect called mood. Mood is a thing that verbs can express attitudes, even numbers and persons, and also verbs can express attitudes. If I were to say, do your homework, it's a kind of a giving command. May you do homework, you get another expression, another idea. So verbs tells all these aspects, expressions, using the category called mood. So words do not merely mention actions. They talk about person, they sometimes talk about, all the time talk about tense, and also number, and also mood. And there's something called voice. Voice, there are two voices, active voice and passive voice. Subject of an active verb performs an action, as in I pay. Subject is I, the person who is performing the action. Subject of a passive verb has the action of a verb performed upon himself, herself, or itself. Compare this example. I am paid by him. So the action is performed upon himself in this example. In Pāli, we have third voice also, but we'll be talking about this in the coming lectures. Okay, now I want to direct your attention to something called conjugation. As you can see, what is called conjugation? Conjugation is the change that takes place in a verb to denote, to express tense, mood, person, and other things like voice and all the number and all the other things. So in nouns, we talked about declension. When there's a nominal base and we add case ending to that noun, We call this process in a grammatical way declension. As in the same way, we have root and we add a conjugational sign to that root, and then we add verbal termination. The process of adding these particles to a root, this process is called conjugation. If you understand this grammatical concept, you get to know about lot about language. So our aim is today in our lecture is to give an introduction to verbs. If you know verbs, now you know about nouns from the first lecture. In today's lecture, you are going to explore about verbs. If you know nouns and verbs, you can make little sentences. Making sentences is the first step in learning any language. If you are able to make a sentence in a language, that means you get the fluency day by day. So today's aim of this lecture is to give you some kind of understanding about how the verbs are formed in Pāli language. To do that, I'll be introducing something called root and also conjugation sign and also verbal termination. This might be new things to you, but you will get to know about this as we move on in this lecture. So let's talk about conjugation in English language. You can see this is the simple present tense, and we have the word live, and the conjugation happens by adding ed to live, and then it becomes past tense, and we have auxiliary verb will, and when we add will to the verb live, it becomes a future tense. So this is something called conjugation. So the same thing happening in Pāli language as well. But in English, it has a different way of conjugating things. As you can see here, in the future tense, will is added to give the future meaning. And in the past tense, ed is added to a verb, give that conjugational sense. But in the Pāli language, as we already know about Pāli language, Pāli is an highly inflected language. So inflection or conjugation happening at the end of a Pāli verb. So if you need to understand the verbal formation of a Pāli verb, where should you have to look for? At the end of a Pāli verb. So let's look at some examples to understand this. As you can see here, you can see this one, you can find this one in your lecture note as well. So here, the root is, Pach is the root. Roots are words or grammatical category which explain about mere action. As an example, Pach explain the action of cooking. So we can say to cook. But does it say about who performed the action of cooking? Or how many people performing the action of cooking? Or when the action of cooking happening? We can't get that idea by analyzing, by getting to know about root. Root merely says about, say about an action, mere action. Here, to cook. But in order to give the full sense of a verb, let's say he cooks. What we have to do is in Pāli is we have to add conjugational sign. So the conjugational sign the root Pach takes is R as the conjugation sign. And then we have verbal termination. This is the first person. In the traditional grammar, Pāli grammarians cite person in a different way. In English, I is the first person, but in Pāli, he is the first person. But don't worry, you will get used to this first person and the third person. Or if you like the European way, you can say this is the first person and this is the third person. Right? So what I want to say is, I want to make a little Pāli sentence. verb is pach, root is pach, and it takes a conjugational sign R, and then to this one we add verbal termination. So pach plus R, we can call this as a verbal stem, verbal base. Root plus conjugation sign is called verbal base or verbal stem. Why it is so called? If you analyze here, this is the word pachati, means cooks. I'll be explaining this. If you go here, pachanti, this is the verb. And if you come here, pachasi, and here pachata, and here pachami, and here pachama. What is the root? In purple color you can see the root. Root is pach, and you can see the conjugational sign here, and T is the verbal termination. Verbal termination tells us about the person, as I explained earlier, and also the tense, and also the voice, and also the number. Okay, these are bound up with verbal termination, but we have pach as something which mere tells about the mere action, and then we add R. We add R as a verbal termination, and we add T as verbal termination. So here, if you understand, pach is the root and R is added as a conjugational sign, you can see the same thing here, and also same thing here, and also same thing here, but here with a little difference, being R added, R is added here, lengthen, and R is here. But here you can see the verbal base or the verbal stem remains the same. Again, I'm repeating the same process. First, you have to know about pach is the root, to which we add conjugation sign R, and then we add verbal termination T. So the third person verbal termination is T, as you can see here. Nti is the plural, and Si is the second person singular verbal termination, and Tha is the second person plural verbal termination. Mi is the first person singular verbal termination, and Ma is the first person plural verbal termination. So now we can understand pachati, pachanti, pachasi, pachami, pachama. Repeat after me. Pachati, pachanti, pachasi, pachata, pachami, pachama. So again, if you don't understand, I'm repeating the same process. Cook is the root, to which we add conjugational sign, and T is the verbal termination. Root plus conjugational sign, verbal termination result in verb. We call this one pachati verb. But here you can understand when you compare with English language, he cooks, we can see by looking at this S, we can see this is third person singular, and by looking at this one, we can say this is a plural verb because it is cook. But all the other places, cook remains the same. Cook, I cook, we cook. But this is not the case with Pāli language. If you understand, analyze the Pāli verbs, here the common element that we can see here is pacha, what we call a verbal base. Here the common element is pacha, and here pachami. So this is strengthened, here it is lengthened, but we can define a common element called pacha. This is the verbal stem. Again, verbal stem is root plus conjugational sign, as you can see here in the lecture note also, there are sometimes suffixes and infixes, also prefixes added to this verbal base. We'll be talking these things in coming lectures, but for now you have to understand root plus conjugational sign plus verbal termination is what we call a verb in Pāli language. If we break a Pāli verb into its principal units, we can understand, we can identify at least 3 grammatical principal units. It is root, conjugational sign, verbal termination. Again, I want to give you little understanding about personal pronouns as well. So from today onwards, you have to know about so is the third person singular, meaning he. Repeat after me. So means he. Te in Pāli means they. Tvam means you. Tumhe means you all. Aham means I. Mayam means we. Again, repeat after me. So, te, tvang, tumhe, ahang, mayam. You have to remember this if you want to continue this Pāli course. So, today main takeaway is verb, but you have to remember these personal pronouns. This will help you to make a little sentence in Pāli language. Today we are going to make little sentence. So, battang, batta is boiled rice. Batta is boiled rice. We know that accusative singular case ending for noun is ang. Now we know this one, and we drop the ending part of the nominal base, and then we get battang as accusative singular. Accusative case is used to denote a direct object. So battang pachati. So is the subject here. Battang is the direct object, and pachati is the verb. So this is a little sentence. Now you can practice this sentence. When the lecture is finished, before you do anything else, you can practice this in order to get a good understanding. So it's the personal pronoun, means he. Battang means rice or cooked rice. Cooks pachati. Here again you have to have the ability to break this verb into its principal parts. Again, I'm breaking this verb. Pach is the root, a is the conjugational sign, t is the verbal termination. Here, pach is the root, a is the conjugational sign, unti is the verbal termination. In the same way, we can break all these verbs into their principal parts. Now, I want to say a little thing about, again you can see here, t is the verbal termination for third person singular. Anti is the verbal termination for third person plural. Si is the verbal termination for second person singular. Ta is the verbal termination for second person plural. Mi is the verbal termination for first person singular, and ma is the verbal termination for first person plural. To this you can add pach, cha, pach, so what happens here? Pach, 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 pach. So what happens here? This becomes pachati. There's no change here. Pachanti. But here ending is dropped. Pachasi, pachata. Here, before the verbal termination mi and ma R is lengthened. So this one becomes pachami and pachama. So this is a rule that you have to remember. Before the verbal termination me and verbal termination ma, conjugational sign is lengthened or strengthened. So this is what you have to learn today. So if you go to do the exercises, there are a few things that you have to know. You have to know the classification of roots. In your lecture note, please turn to the page number 4. You can see roots are categorized in terms of how their present form is formed. Roots are divided into 7 groups or classes according to way in which their present tense is formed. So you can understand this one. So the first verb group is called buadi. Don't worry about the name. Bu is the prominent root of that class. That's why it is called buadi. And rud is the prominent here. Rud is the prominent root here. That's why it is called rudadi group. Adi means etc. and gana means group. And third group is divadi group, and fourth group is swadi group, and fifth one is kiyadi group, and sixth one is tanadi group, and seventh one is churadi group. You can understand this one. Today what we have to understand here is only first group and also the seventh group. If you are going to do the exercise, this will be of much importance. First group and the seventh group, and how to form their verbs. So before you're going to do, I want to introduce very important grammatical principle, which is called vowel gradation. Vowel gradation in Pāli language, a vowel has 3 grades, and a vowel can be lengthened or strengthened to give a strong sense. Let's take example R. R is called in its guna grade, and this can be lengthened by prefixing R in the beginning, and then it becomes R. This is the lengthened grade. So zero grade, strong grade, and lengthened grade. In Pāli we call avuddhika and guna and buddhi. 3 grades of vowels of the Pāli language. How to do this? We prefix R in the beginning of a sound, then it becomes guna grade and buddhi grade. So to give you an example, E is a vowel, and if you prefix R in the beginning, and then it goes to its guna grade, which is A. Example is given. This is li, a root to lick, and then this can be lengthened. E goes to A. This happens when a consonant follows. Here ha is a consonant, E is followed by a consonant. When E is followed by a consonant, E changes to A. This is called guna grade. E is now in guna grade. And also when E is followed by a vowel, let's say, now you know, ni is a root, and it is followed by a conjugational sign here. Because of the influence of this conjugational sign, E becomes I. Just remember this principle. I'll be explaining how this happens in another day, but for today you can understand E becomes I. This is the guna grade of E, and it can be further lengthened. I is the guna grade, the second grade, let's say, and it can be further lengthened by adding R. Then it becomes B is the root to fear, it means fear, and if you add R as a conjugational sign, E becomes I. So Bhajati is the verb here. So the same thing happens here. U becomes O. Jut is the root and is followed by conjugational sign A. Because of the influence of this conjugational sign, U goes to is, turns to it, gunagrade, Jot, and we add A and T, it becomes Jotati. Okay, so again, Ju is the root, A is the conjugational sign, and T is the verbal termination. It goes to its gunagrade, Jot, the T. You can understand U turns to its gunagrade O. U turns its gunagrade O, and U goes to Av. So Bhu is a root, means to be, and we have A. T is the verbal termination. T is the verbal termination. So this U becomes Av. Then it becomes Bhavati. Bu becomes Bhavati. And again, Lu becomes, Lu can be U. U can be further lengthened to Av. So Lu, A, T. U becomes Av, La. Conjugational sign is A here. La, Veti. So this is what you have to know. Again, before you go to do the exercises, you have to know the vowel gradation, and also you have to know the seventh conjugation. I told you there are 7 conjugations. First conjugation takes A as a conjugation sign. Second conjugation takes A plus Nigita as its verbal conjugation. But today we have to know 2 verbal conjugations. First conjugation and seventh conjugation. First and seventh. First conjugation, root. For example, it takes A as the conjugation sign. You can add all 6 verbal terminations. Ti, Anti, Si, Tha. This is the second person, singular and plural. Mi, Ma. So this is the root. In this area you can add the root. So again, Dhau, let's say Dhau is a verb, means to run. This is the root, and to this root we add A. So this root belongs to the first conjugation, so that's why we add A here. So then we add Ti. This becomes Dhavati, means he runs. Let's say another example. Ni is the root. To this root we add A. Ni means to lead. So the vowel gradation occurs here. So E becomes I. Nai, I. E becomes I. Then this becomes Nayati. This becomes Nayati. So you have to know the vowel gradation, and we'll be talking again and again about this vowel gradation. But if you have any problem, you can go to this chart and analyze what has happened as in this grammatical category called vowel gradation. So before you do the exercises, you have to know the root, and the first conjugation takes A, and you can add verbal termination. Let's talk about the seventh conjugation takes A and I as conjugation sign. Root A and I are the verbal conjugational signs for the seventh conjugation. So verbal terminations stays the same. You don't want to change them. So root, let's say chur is the root, to steal, and A is the verbal conjugational sign, and T is the third person singular verbal termination. So because of this A, influence of this A, U goes to its guna grade. What's the guna grade of U is O, cho, r, and then A. Root plus conjugational sign is called verbal base or verbal stem. To this we add verbal termination, choreti. If we add so, that means he, choreti means steals. So let's go to te, de, chorenti. This is the verbal base. If you make verbal base one more time, then it's easy for you to make other verbs. Chorenti, chorenti. That means they steal. Tvam means you. Chore si, you steal. Tumhe chore th. So as in the same way, you can make ahang, ahang, chore mi. Mayang, vi, cho, re, ma. So you have to know this. And there's another conjugational sign for the seventh conjugation. It is aya. Okay. We take the same root chur, so we can make this one goes to its guna grade cho, then we can add choraya like this, chorayati, chorayanti, chorayasi, chorayata, chorayami, chorayama. Before you make cho, ra, ya and mi, you have to know that before the verbal termination mi and ma, before the verbal terminations mi and ma, a should be lengthened. So it's not chorayami, no, it's chorayami, always chorayama. So that's you have to know to go to the second, do the third and fourth exercises in the textbook. I think we are running out of time. This is the time for asking questions. If someone has any questions, this is the time to ask questions. I know today's lecture is a little bit difficult to grasp, but you have to get used to these the grammatical concepts. But don't worry if you don't get this one. Please refer to the lecture note given and also read the textbook. You will get used to this. These are abstract concepts, and this will take some getting used to. So don't worry if you don't understand this one, but try to grasp, try to read again and again. And we can't cover this much within one lecture, but I'm sure I can guarantee that I'll be able to finish this as time goes, and you can ask questions and also. But try to do your exercises. I skimmed through most of the homeworks handed over to me on Google Classroom. I'm very impressed by some efforts as well. And also I could find some innovative answers as well. Today, if you have some time, I'll be the answers for the first and second exercises. And for the time being, if you have any questions, you can ask questions from me. And also you can ask from our co-teachers as well. I think Bante Magavihari is also online. You can ask from him directly. And also, if you want to ask me, you can ask me as well.
Yes. So, how can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, Bante.
Okay. So, thank you, Venerable Sumedalaka, for this wonderful lecture. And
You're welcome.
hello, everyone. You have joined the second lecture of this Pali course, and I hope you enjoyed it. And today was an introduction to the verbs, which is a very plays a huge pivotal role in the language, in any language. So there are a few questions that I would like to direct towards Venerable Sumedha Loka. So one question was about the word order. About the word order. So
Word
something,
order.
yeah, something like subject, object, verb. So in Pali, we know the normal verb order is subject, object, verb. And so please explain it, and also give a idea for the audience that sometimes the verb can appear in any place when we come into advanced sentences. So please explain these two, like the basic structure and the advanced structure.
So as you can see on the board, there are two sentences. One is written in Pali and one is written in English. So the translation is given in English. So we studied today. So means he. Gachati means goes. It's the verb. And gamang is to the village. You learned this one in the first lecture. This is means accusative singular. This is the goal of motion, but we use accusative singular to give the goal of motion. Here, he goes to the village. If you analyze this one, so is the subject. Gamang is the object. Gachati is the verb. So in Pali, normal verb order is subject, object, verb. We call this SOV order. This is the normal order, ordinary order. But when you go to read canonical text, you can see sometimes sentences begin with verbs. But as a beginner, you don't want to focus about this, but you have to understand that SOV is the normal order in Pali language as a beginner. But if you go to read canonical text or post-canonical text, you can see verb appears in the middle or in the beginning or at the end sometimes. So this is the normal order, SOV order. So this is quite challenging if your language hasn't got the different way of putting subject to object and verb, the verb order. So in English, we can see he is the subject, goes is the verb, and to the village is the object. In English, subject, verb, object. So this is quite challenging for some time, but you have to know the verb order in Pali. As you can see here, normal understanding should be subject, object, and verb, SOV order.
Thank you for this clear answer, Bhante. And actually, for the audience, please keep in mind, even you change the order. For example, gachati so gamang, or gaman so gachati. Gachati, gaman so, still the meaning is same.
Yes.
So in Pali, basically you have to learn the ending, the noun, declination, or the conjugation. If you see the ang that Bhatne has clearly mentioned, ang, so, ti. So when you focus on these parts, you will be able to understand the meaning in when you go into advanced sentences. Yes, thank you, Bhante, for your explanation on this. And also, there was another thing to be clarified that I would like to ask you. You mentioned about the conjugational sign and the conjugation.
Yes.
Conjugation is a process, right?
Yes.
Conjugational sign is a mark.
Yeah.
So please erase the board and clearly show them what is a conjugational sign and what do you mean by conjugation, because this can lead to a confusion. Which prefer if you can completely erase the entire board.
In your lecture note, you can understand what is called conjugation. It is mentioned conjugation is the process where a verb changes to distinguish its, this is the verb, tense and number and person and sometimes voice. So when verb changes to denote these grammatical aspects, the process is complete, whole process is called conjugation. But in order to perform this conjugation, we need certain principal units. Let's say in Pāli we have root and we have conjugational sign. Why it is called conjugational sign? There are different roots, they take different conjugational signs. That's why conjugational sign is in the first conjugation it's R, okay, and then we have verbal termination. This whole process, adding a conjugational sign and verbal termination and eventually changing the meaning of a verb or completing the action of conjugation or combining these things is called conjugation. But we need conjugational sign and verbal termination, sometimes prefixes, infixes, suffixes come in, but you have to know the process, whole process is called conjugation, and one unit which we use to make this process is called conjugational sign.
Thank you for this explanation. It's very clear. In this example, R is the conjugational sign. The entire process is the conjugation.
Yeah.
So please keep this in mind. It will be very useful. And also there was a question about, we'll make this one or the last question before you go into the explain the questions, last week's Q&A exercises. So someone has asked a question. When we say a person goes to the village, normally to the village, so it sometimes feels like we have to use the dative case. It's a very, very logical question. So
yes.
In Pāli, normally when we use object of the motion, where we go, we normally use the accusative case. So please explain this with much information.
So in our first lecture, we talked about the accusative case. Accusative case is used to give two expressions. One is accusative case gives direct object which is affected by the action, and goal of motion. It talks about goal of motion. If you don't understand, you can Google this one as well. This is the second usage of the accusative case, goal of motion. So going is something, it's an action of going. So the motion, it's a motion. So the goal of this action of going is to go to or to reach one place from another. So let's say this is the place A to B. We have action of going. So the goal of this action or going is to go from A to B. So this kind of notion is explained through accusative case. But in our naked eye we can't distinguish, but in this example, I bow to you. I bow to you. Let's get another example. I think the better one than this one. Let's say, okay, I bow to you would be okay. I bow to you. So here, this is not the direct object. This is not the direct object. This is something who's receiving something. The respect is receiving something, but we use the to. I think to is it makes the confusion here. It makes the confusion. This is the goal of motion, but this one is to you. It's the dative case. Someone receives something. Let's say, for example, he gave me a puppy. He gave me a puppy. Right? So the direct object of this one is we find the main verb and ask what. What did he give? He gave a puppy. So this is the direct object. And the recipient of the direct object is called indirect object. This is the indirect object. So the dative case explains about the indirect object. Sometimes I bow to you, he receives something, so this is dative case. So these are the usages of dative case, and here this is accusative case is used. But it takes some time. You have to know the usages of each case to understand this one, or in order to explain this one to someone else.
Yeah, thank you, Bante. Also now, when we say the direct object, we have to keep in mind, it can be the place you go, it can be the place you take someone, it can be a place that you ascend to, it can be a place you descend to. Whatever emotion, when emotion is involved, the place where you go or move is the goal of motion. When Bante said that the direct object and the dative, another thing to keep in mind, an object is directly affected by the action. The object undergoes a change most of the time when action is done on it. But when in the dative case, there's nothing happening to the object. It's receiving the action, like the puppy is received. So likewise, but keep in mind, the direct object doesn't always change physically. It's a one way of thinking it. Yeah. So thank you very much, Bante, for your explanation. And I think these things will be clear to the audience with the time. That's how the course is being made. Yes. So please, we'll open the Q&A like the last week's exercises.
Yeah. I think first, if someone has questions about the unclear points in the first and second exercises, they can ask first.
So far, there was nothing was posted.
Okay.
Yeah, we will continue. We'll continue, Bante. If they have any posted question, I'll raise it to you.
I think if someone likes to open his mic, unmute his.
Okay.
So if you have questions, you can ask now we have given you the permission to open your mic.
Yes, Bante.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. May I ask if the sentence is I bring flowers to the monastery. So to the monastery is considered dative or accusative?
To the monastery. So again, you can understand physically, as Bante Maggi here explained, you can go to the physical action itself. It is one way of thinking. So someone is going to the monastery. He moves from one place to another place, which is called goal of action. So that place should be put in accusative case. It is not dative case, because the monastery doesn't receive, although you can think it in a wrong way as monastery receives you or something like that, but it's yes, but you should not think in that way. But we take the goal of it as a goal of motion rather than monastery receives you or something like that. If you think it in that way, you will be in trouble. But that's a good question. Okay. That's a good question. Thank you very much.
Actually, monastery cannot receive the flowers.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. You're welcome.
Unless you offer the flowers to the monastery.
Monastery. Yes.
Namaste. In the book, there are some letters which look like N, but it's it has a curve at the end of the N. What's that word? What's that letter? No, not that. Yeah,
This one?
the second one. The second one.
This one. So, I couldn't mention this one in my clarification on M dot under dot above. So, the Niggahita, what we call pure nasal in English, is represented in 3 ways in books. M dot under, this is this symbol is to represent pure nasal, and also M dot above is also to represent pure nasal, and also in some books it is mentioned with this symbol. So these all 3 symbols represent one sound which is called pure nasal sound, like Buddham. So you can either write it like Buddham dot above, or dot under dot above, or Buddhang like this. So all refers to one sound, which is pure nasal sound. So if you have troubles reading or writing, just think about the sound itself, where it is articulated, rather than focusing the symbols.
Okay, so when we write, we can avoid the last one and we can use the M with the under dot.
Yes, this has fallen out of favor now, but this one is the most frequent one. I'll be happy if you write in this one. Thank you very much. I think it's better if you can introduce yourself to me before you are asking question. We get to know about people as well, students as well, and it's a pleasure to know.
My name is Ram, and I was the person who asked the question just now.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, or should I?
Bante?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Shira. I'm from Israel.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the lesson. These 2 lessons were very, very interesting, fascinating actually. I filled in my the enrollment form and I sent it, but I didn't get any reply, and I don't know how to continue from there. Like, I want to hand in my homework, and what shall I do?
Sound is not clear to me. Could you please repeat the question?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean it's our technical difficulties here.
Okay.
You're not clear to me because of the speaker here. It's not working properly.
Oh, I see.
If you could, Venerable Sangarathan, if you could you please ask the question again?
It's a technical question, not about the Pali language.
Okay.
I sent the enrollment form for for registering the class.
Yeah.
The course, but I didn't get any reply, and I didn't get the link to the Google Classroom and all that.
Okay, you can if you could find an email on that Google form, please send me an email, then I'll reply to you, because I thought already, I mean the registration period is over, but I could see people registering. But if you want to get that Google link, you can send me an email, and I'll be replying to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think it's better now we go to the exercises because I are running out of time.
Yes. Should we do all? I think we should not do all.
Yeah, you can select some few.
We can select something, some words, and then we can give the explanation. What I found is that people struggle with the word order. They were giving all possible alternative words in the second. I think it's better to start with the second exercise rather than starting from the first. So the first one is pu ri sassa gono. Before you try to translate this, don't come to any conclusions. Go by grammatical rules. That's what you have to do. First, what you have to do is understand this purisa is the base and assa is the case ending. So this is dropped when in the morphology this is dropped, and then we get purisassa. Where can we find purisassa in that declension paradigm? That's the question. We have purisassa in two places. Where are they? In dative singular, we have purisassa or assa ending, and also genitive singular. So those are the two places where assa case ending can be found. And gono, there's no doubt, ambiguity with this sound, because O appears in one place in the declension chart or the declension paradigm. So this should be exactly nominative singular, meaning this is a singular subject. This is the subject. Gono, ox, purisassa. So we have to make this translation as also a relatable one, something, a reality. So how do we say purisassa gono? So this should be the subject. Can we say ox to the person, to man? No, it's not a related one. It should be a related one. So I'll go for the genitive singular. That is ox of a man, or man's ox. So when we have, I mean, this is good for the first lesson because you can give all the alternative forms, all possible translations, but it doesn't work here because this should be a relatable one. So the second choice, genitive singular, would be the correct answer here. So if we go to, I could find people struggling with rukke sakuno. Let's go. Rukke sakuno. Rukke sakuno. Rukke sakuno. Rukke, where can we find A? Rukka is the, please go for the base first. Rukka is the base, and to which we add A case ending. Where can we find A? A can be found in two places in the declension paradigm. They are accusative plural, and also locative singular. Locative singular. How do I say? Because I have already memorized the paradigm, so I can understand where the declension appear in my mind. So you have to do the same thing. If you are not, if you are not comfortable with this declension charts, what you can do is you can find something called cheat sheets online, or either you can make it by your own, and then you use that cheat sheet in front of you, and placing in front of you, you try to figure out in this form, where does this form appear in the declension sheet. So accusative singular is the object. It talks about the object, and locative singular talks about the place. So rukke sakuno, sakuno is the nominative, we can find o at the end, so it should be a subject. Sakuno is the bird, we can but you do not to put the article, but if you feel like you cannot write without an article, which is the case for me, bird, so you cannot translate if you take accusative plural. So you have to choose locative singular, the bird on a tree. So the bird, a tree, if you take accusative case, it would be the bird, a tree. That would not be a relatable or a sentence that which makes a sense. Okay, so that's how you have to do. I think we are running out of time. I think if anyone.
We have 5 minutes left. You can take one more 2 examples.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to translate some English sentences into Pāli. That would be useful. The villages of the king. What you have to do is, in Pāli, word order changes, but in the primary level, you can just translate these and then you can swap around things. Okay, of the king, this is the genitive case. King is singular. You are not translating, you are analyzing it in a grammatical way. First, what you have to do is, of means genitive, you come to that conclusion, you write it on the top of that word, and then king is the singular. If there's s at the end, we put plural, but here in this case it's singular, so genitive singular. You write this down first before translating anything. You have to follow this procedure. If you follow this procedure, you will get the correct answers. Otherwise, you will get your answers, not the correct answers. The villages. So what can this be? So if we take this as a subject, villages of the king. So if we take this one as a subject, village is the word, so we can say this is villages plural, so this is the subject and it's the plural. Subject is expressed through nominative case, so this is nominative plural. So gamma is the base. Okay, so you write this is the secondary level, gamma, and then you add the case ending, and this is Bhupala is given. I think it's Bhupala given in the book. Bhupala, I'll be using the same word, Bhupala. So genitive, these are the stems, and to which you add nominative plural. What is the case ending for nominative plural? It is a. Bhupala. Case ending for genitive singular is assa. Right? Now we are going to make the words. We drop the ending of a base. Then we have gamma. Here the same thing happens. We have Bhupalassa. Okay, now you have to change the word order. So we take this one first. Bhupalassa gamma. If you can write this down, I think it would be really beneficial as we advance, because in the beginner level, in the first and second exercises, maybe up to 10 exercises, things are really easy. But as you advance, things get really difficult for you. If you don't analyze it grammatically, in a grammatical way, things will be really difficult for you. So adapt this kind of method to answer questions like this primary level and the secondary level. You may get the answer at the third level, like in mathematics. But this way of analyzing a verb or sentence would be really important and beneficial for you. With that, I think we can conclude our second lecture. If you don't have any questions.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Hello, Bhante. May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Amy. My question is about the complete sentence in Pāli, the structure of complete sentence. For example, like the villages of the kings are green, like that. That is my question.
So for you to do that, I think we have to do some declensions, and also we have to understand about the syntax, what is called syntax, but we haven't talked about it yet. If you understand the syntax also, the practice would help you to form a verb and put it in an orderly way that makes sense. But in Pāli, it doesn't matter, because Pāli is an inflected language. As Bhante Magvihari pointed out, let's say we have I'm taking the same example, so gamang gacchati, because this one is really easy, and he goes to the village. Okay, so if we drop this one, suppose you don't see this one, gamang gacchati, this ti, the verb ending, the case ending or the verbal termination is, this one implies the subject who is doing or performing the action. But in English also, if you take this goes, it implies that the person performing the action would be he or she or it. But if you go to the plural one, they go to the village, then it's a trouble. If you see this one, only this one, go to the village, you can't guess it may be you or you all, I or we. But this is not something happening in Pāli. If we see this ti, it is implied, the subject is implied by ti, the verbal ending. So no matter where the verbs appear in a sentence, we can understand what the sentence says. For the time being, I would say, before we going into syntax, learning syntax, it's better for you to just to stick with this kind of pattern or sentence pattern, and as we move on, we can get to know about how the word formation or the word order occurs in Pāli language. Thank you very much for your question.
So thank you very much, Bhante, and thank you for everyone who joined. It was a very nice lecture. And always keep in mind, this is a language, so you need time, as Bhante explained last week. Climbing mountains, swimming, learning and meditation, all four needs constant practice and time. So please don't get discouraged if you are finding it difficult. If you join the classes, and please keep in mind, do the exercises, that is the key. And also every day read the vocabulary, at least 1 or 2 a day, what the Bhante has provided. If you have any technical errors, technical problems, please contact our WhatsApp group or the Telegram group. Please, they will help as much as possible. And yeah, we have also decided that people could register till the 5th lecture at least, but we encourage you to get registered as soon as possible, because more the lectures are gone, more it will be difficult to catch up. So thank you very much, and do your exercises and submit them and read the vocabulary. And we hope you to see you next time. Thank you very much, Mante Sumedaloka. We'll conclude the class by reciting Buddha Sasanam Chirantitatu.
So you can find the homeworks for today's lesson. It would be exercise number 3 and exercise number 4. All the information to do these exercises are explained today in today's lecture. But I recommend you to read through, and if you have any questions, you can post questions on Google Class as well. Okay, we will recite Buddha Sasanam Chirantitatu. May the dispensation of the Buddha last long. Buddha Sasanam Chirantitatu. Buddha Sasanam Chirantitatu. Buddha Sasanam Chirantitatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.